I'm Joe Galvan, HUD Midwest Regional Administrator, overseeing the six-state region of Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. I'll be your host of this series of video conferences highlighting key HUD secretarial initiatives and some of the best practices across the Midwest and the nation. Joining us today, we have George Guy, CEO and Executive Director of the Fort Wayne Housing Authority. George was elected to serve as president of the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials Northern Central Regional Council last fall. NCRC, as it's commonly known, is one of only 8 coordinating councils for NAHRO across the nation, and is comprised of 8 active state chapters that help facilitate participation at the local level. Now, those 8 state chapters, they overlap HUD's Midwest region and includes the 2 additional states, Iowa and Nebraska. Given this vantage point, and over 2 decades helping underserved communities, we are happy to have you with us today. Welcome, George.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, a couple of questions that we have. This is an extremely rare situation with pandemic COVID-19 going on. So, extraordinary times. And we've been hearing many inspiring stories about residents, public housing authorities, and other stakeholders coming together to assist those in need to ensure they know that we are all in together. And of course, you and your team, you're on the front lines. Your people are going into places, going into senior housing developments where this virus may or may not be there, and they're putting themselves on the front line to help their neighbors, to make sure your residents are safe and secure. So, are there any activities that you're aware of where individuals are rising to the occasion in the support of HUD-assisted residents or the community at large?
Yeah, I think it's happening all across the Midwest here. I think PHAs are partnering with their local city, also the social service agencies and things of that nature. I can tell you that they're partnering with transportation companies, whether, like here in Fort Wayne, our community transportation system, they're picking up residents to take them to food pantries and things of that nature. You got food banks. And this just today, our social services director was meeting with our care system, they call it here. So they're meeting regularly, planning, ensuring that residents and participants have what they need in terms of food. And just like I said, just all types of things are going on in the community, and PHAs are engaged in that process. And those are the things that we like to see. I think that for the most part, we're doing this on the ground anyway, but I think what this did was really heighten the importance of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Your people out there, we've heard that across the region, food, how do we get the seniors, those most at risk, how do we get them fed? Food pantries have been under a lot of stress to provide. So I appreciate those comments, and there are best practices. There are best practices by other PHAs across the region to ensure that PHA staff or HUD-assisted residents, are being able to face this unprecedented challenge. So, creative solutions. Any thoughts on any creative solutions you've seen either through your own organization or other organizations across the Midwest here?
Yeah, I think that what we were able to do I think the first thing was we understood that we had to, we were essential. We've been known we're essential. We understood too that we needed to be able, we have an essential service, which is housing. So in order for us to continue to do that, we wanted to make sure that all systems were in place to do that. So what we began to do was use some of our resources, such as just different ways and means of engaging our participants. We wanted to make sure that our participants and residents were safe first. So I think most of housing authorities started planning for this at the beginning of March. Once we saw what was happening, we wanted to make sure that we were on the move to make sure things happen. So I think what was going on was we were trying to make sure that residents and participants continued, that process continued for them to be housed. And then we also wanted to make sure that there was something in place in terms of a way for them to communicate with their case managers and things of that nature. So some of the innovative things would include, so we do what we call briefings. So people have to, and those are our large gatherings where people come in to get issued their vouchers or they do to get their place. So what we started to do was say we can't do that because it's going to encourage spread. So we went into a function where we started using some of our resources, as I said, like GoToMeeting and Zoom, where individuals now can do that electronically from their phone or whatever. Or in some cases, like in places like, small housing authorities in Michigan or Ohio, just use the phone, you know what I mean? And they started using those means as the traditional means and bringing those things back in. So those are some of the innovative things, I think, from getting people housed from the traditional sense. We started going and start using some additional resources for that. So I think what we did was housing authorities began to stretch themselves to see that they can do, we're probably a little bit more efficient now than what we ever thought we could be. So I think that we're now utilizing resources that we didn't think could do. And I think we were ahead, and our partners at HUD, after they saw what we were doing, they then brought in the things that support us, such as relaxing some of the regulations and things of that nature. So those things have encouraged us to continue to do innovative things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate your comments about HUD, because I was on a call listening to the Vice President and Secretary Carson talk about HUD's efforts in working with our stakeholders. And the Secretary has consistently said we need to make sure that we can cut red tape, remove regulatory barriers, to make sure that the money coming out of this care package, it gets to people like you and your team as quickly as possible, and that the rules and regulations need to be adjusted. Because, as you all know, if you're looking at some of the former rules and regs that might have dealt with capital funds, it was a different process. We got to make sure that you are taken care of, your residents are taken care of, the money's expended as quickly as possible. There are other communities, and I've made, I don't know, almost 30 calls with different mayors, elected officials across the Midwest, talking about what they're doing, how they're doing it. A number of them had talked about rental assistance and agreements and working with public housing authorities. Have you worked with the city of Fort Wayne, or do you know any public housing authorities in the Midwest that are working with other cities or counties to address the pandemic?
For sure. I think that's happening all across the region. Fort Wayne, we're working with our cities, such as the cities, municipalities, they may get resources such as PPEs. So they called on us and said, hey, we got these additional PPEs. Those will be for our maintenance people when they go into units and do some of these inspections and things of that nature. So those things help as it pertains to that. And then partnering with your state finance authorities. Those things, because they have access to different things too. So what we're seeing here in Indiana, and I think it's happened across the Midwest as well, is that meetings are being taken place where folks are really talking about what they're doing, how they can help each other through this process. And I know here, what we're doing is every week we're meeting with all the PHAs in the state. We have the partners at HUD. We have IHCDA, Indiana Housing Community Development Authority, and we're on a call every week. and we're talking about what can we do better? What are some of the best practices? Sharing ideas, and then trying to come up with innovative solutions to help each other out. So I think those types of things are happening across the Midwest. I know that from our NCRC, we're having regular meetings and starting to do that as well.
Well, impressive. Yeah, and when you start talking about best practices and solutions, in talking with the mayors across the region, I've said, look, if you're facing some issues, you can bet your bottom dollar other communities are facing the same issues. If you've come up with a response, how to address those issues, please let us know, and because we'll share it with everybody. The one thing that's come out of this, everybody has their oars in the water, and we're all rowing in the same direction. We're all working together, and the secretary wants to make sure that. Well, first off, I just want to say we want to say thank you for everything you're doing, you and your team. Please extend that thanks on behalf of the secretary to the other public housing authorities who are part of your group. And this is your chance to tell us other resources or your website of how people can find resources and opportunities that are available to them.
Yeah, so one of the associations we belong to is called NAHRO. And I think you introduced that, and you said that name, National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials. So that there is www.nahro.org. Our address is www.fwha.org. So on there, you'll find the resources, up-to-date things that are going on. Also, the information in terms of what the CARES Act did to help us during this time. We're expending a lot of resources that we honestly did not have. But with the passing of the CARES Act, the third stimulus bill, we were able to now plug in some of those holes and get that additional resource to be able to take care of folks during this time. So I think that if individuals will go to our websites and see kind of what's going on, they'll be able to engage themselves and understand what we are actually doing and what kind of opportunities will avail themselves for those residents and participants.
Well, thank you for those comments, and I would never have dreamed that we'd be doing chats via teleconference, via Skype, and it's a way to get the message out. So I appreciate you being with us, taking the time, conveying your updates, and all the good work you're doing here in the Midwest, and your partners, all the public housing authorities. God bless you and your team, keep them safe, and we thank you for joining us today. So next up, we will be addressing Section 3 and self-sufficiency in time of COVID-19. Hope you all can join us. Thank you.